Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and the Ukraine. Well, today there is continued high pressure, very high pressure, to push through the Ukrainian arms aid package. Now, again, this is not entirely weapon systems. This is also the ability of direct infusions of cash money to the Ukrainian state. And I've talked about this repeatedly. Is it probable? Is it more likely now that the U.S. government will be able to push through this arms package? It seems to be heading in that direction. And the desperation that is happening on the front line of the continued war is really pushing that aid package. As I've talked about previously, the Ukrainian military, as we speak, is in an incredibly precarious situation. Now, we continue to hear about objectives such as the seizure of Chasiv Yar, other towns, villages, cities along the front lines, that there are objectives, time-dated objectives that the Russians are wishing to accomplish. So, for instance, we've heard repeatedly that the Russian objective for Chasiv Yar is May 9th. Seizing the town by May 9th. Now, I have to say, I believe that these date stamps, these time stamps, these battlefield objectives that pertain to certain dates in terms of the Russians seizing control of territory is a bit overused. Right now, that is not the objective of Russian forces. The Russian military strategy right now is not to take Chasiv Yar by May 9th. That is not what the military goal is right now, at all. The military goal of the Russian Federation is to crush and destroy the Ukrainian military, creating an atmosphere at which, in a certain point in time, the Ukrainian military completely collapses. And then we're not talking about just the seizure of Chasiv Yar. We're not talking about just the seizure of Kupiansk. We are talking about large-scale seizures of some very large cities throughout the Ukraine. Again, right now, the Russians are moving in piecemeal, very methodically, and they are taking towns and areas, and we're seeing that happen. But it's not to seize control of towns and villages by a certain timestamp, date, time. We have to do this by this period. That's not what they're doing, the Russians. Look, the Russians are rolling off the production lines, possibly hundreds of new and or refurbished T-80s, T-90s, T-72s, T-62s, T-55, 54s, what have you. Many tanks are being produced. And eventually, these tanks en masse that are being produced now are in fact going to be used. Is it going to be used this summer in the aforementioned seizure of vast areas of Ukraine? Possibly. But right now there are three weapon systems. Three main weapon systems that the Russians are using not to take territory, not to seize territory, That is a byproduct of these weapon systems. But these weapon systems are designed to destroy armies, crush militaries. The Iskander. These weapon systems are striking deep into the rear areas of the Ukrainian military, attacking command nodes, supply depots, headquarters, logistical points, command and control. I think I already said that. Weapon system number 1. Weapon system number 2, the Lancet. Lancet 1 through variant possibly 4 now. A kamikaze drone system that is designed for frontline battlefield deployment and, in fact, also attacks in the near rear area, up to 10, 20 miles behind the front line. Now, these weapon systems are designed to attack individual weapon systems in bunkers. Second weapon system, the Zala Lancet. Third and final, and probably right now the most effective and the most terrifying weapon, is the GLONASS guided bomb. These systems, weighing as much as 3 tons, are continuing to attack up to 100 Ukrainian aim points per day. Now, these systems are attacking fortified positions along the front line to, again, deep in the rear area. So these 3 systems, the glide bomb, the Lancet, the Iskander, these 3 weapon systems are probably having the most impact on the battlefield right now in the course of this conflict. And again, is it designed to seize control of large areas of territory? This is where the tanks are going to come in. But that's not going to happen until you start to see the Ukrainian military dissolve. And in the West, the United States, the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, European intelligence agencies, they are starting to see that happen as we speak. Even if this arms package is pushed through, even if it's pushed through, it is not going to change what is happening on the battlefield in terms of the use of these weapon systems. They're going to continue to be used, and they're going to continue to cause massive casualties against the Ukrainian military. Again, not the seizure of territory. We're going to see that happen, but again, a byproduct of this fix and destroy strategy that the Russians are using. If the Russians see a target along the front line or in the near rear area or in the rear area, they are attacking those targets. And it's not a rushed operation. It's a very methodical, persistent way of war that right now is absolutely flabbergasting both the West and the Ukrainian military. I think the Ukrainians would prefer to see some sort of mass Russian tank assault in which the Ukrainians could employ javelins, in-laws, HIMARS systems, what have you, against these columns of Russian tanks. The Russians aren't doing that. They're not taking the bait. Again, they've changed their doctrine. They've changed their way of war right now. And they're essentially killing the Ukrainian military without taking the kind of casualties the Russians were taking earlier in the conflict. Now, that's not to say casualties are not being taken, and the Russians still do localized offensive operations when they believe that they have reduced the Ukrainian military in a certain sector. But you're going to see this continue. And it's very possible this could go on for some time. But at a certain point, the Ukrainians are going to run into this situation, which they're already feeling now, where their casualty levels are so high that no one wants to be deployed to the front lines. Because in the minds of the average Ukrainian soldier, the conclusion of the war, what's going to happen, has already been decided. Many in the Ukraine fully understand now that they simply cannot win. And if they believe they can't win, they're not going to die for a lost cause. More to come. Thank you for joining us today. As always, have a good day.